Daniel didn't understand what she meant. He simply turned around and walked into his house. When he entered the kitchen, Lily was sitting at the table waiting for him. She looked at her father and asked, "Daddy, did you get the groceries?" Daniel froze. He didn't want to tell his daughter that he had given away their last $20. But Lily knew her father better than anyone. She looked at his empty hands and immediately understood. She asked, "Did you help somebody again?" Daniel smiled sadly. He sat beside her and said, "There was a woman outside." Lily looked toward the window. She asked, "Was she hungry?" Daniel nodded. Lily thought for a moment. Then she smiled and said, "Mommy would have helped her too." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He pulled his daughter into his arms. That night, Daniel gave Lily the last 2 slices of bread in the kitchen. He told her he wasn't hungry. Lily knew he was lying, but she didn't say anything. She simply hugged him. Neither of them knew that their lives were about to change forever. The next morning, Daniel woke up before sunrise. He was preparing Lily for school when they heard a strange sound outside. It sounded like several expensive cars stopping in front of the house. Daniel looked through the window. His face immediately changed. 3 black luxury SUVs were parked outside. Behind them was a long black Mercedes Maybach. Daniel had never seen a vehicle that expensive parked on his street. Lily ran toward the window. She asked, "Daddy, who are those people?" Daniel didn't know. A man wearing a black suit stepped out of the Maybach. He walked directly toward Daniel's front door. Then someone knocked. Daniel slowly opened the door. The man looked at him and asked, "Are you Daniel Brooks?" Daniel answered, "Yes." The man took a deep breath. Then he said, "We need to talk to you about the woman you helped last night." Daniel's heart started beating faster. He immediately asked, "Is she okay?" The man smiled. He said, "She's more than okay." Daniel looked confused. Then the man stepped aside. A woman slowly walked out of the luxury car. Daniel recognized her immediately. It was the homeless woman from the night before. But she looked completely different. She was wearing an elegant black coat. Her hair was perfectly styled. Several security guards stood behind her. And around her neck was a diamond necklace that probably cost more than Daniel's entire house. Daniel couldn't speak. The woman walked toward him. She stopped in front of his door. Then she smiled and said, "Good morning, Daniel." Daniel stared at her. He asked, "Who are you?" The woman looked at Lily. Then she looked back at Daniel. She said, "My name is Victoria Harrington." Daniel's expression changed. He had heard that name before. Everyone in Chicago had. It was almost midnight in a quiet neighborhood outside Chicago, Illinois, when Daniel Brooks pulled his old Ford into the driveway of his small rented house. The temperature had dropped below freezing that night, and Daniel could see his own breath as he stepped out of the car. He was 38 years old, a single father, and a man who had learned how to survive without asking anyone for help. For the past 6 years, Daniel had been raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, completely on his own. His wife had passed away after a long illness, leaving Daniel with a broken heart, a mountain of medical bills, and a little girl who depended on him for everything. Daniel worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. During the day, he worked as a delivery driver. At night, he repaired heating and air conditioning systems for a small local company. It was exhausting, but every time he looked at Lily, he reminded himself that giving up was never an option. That night, Daniel had only $20 left in his wallet. It was supposed to buy milk, bread, cereal, and medicine for Lily the next morning. Daniel walked toward his front door when he suddenly noticed someone sitting near the sidewalk. It was a woman. She was wrapped in an old gray coat. Her hands were shaking from the cold, and beside her was a small, worn-out backpack. Daniel stopped walking. For a few seconds, he simply stared at her. Then the woman slowly lifted her head. She looked exhausted. She looked frightened. And more than anything, she looked like someone who had completely lost hope. Daniel wanted to keep walking. He knew he couldn't afford to get involved. He had his daughter to think about. He had bills waiting on the kitchen counter. He had barely enough money to make it through the week. But something about the woman's eyes made him stop. Daniel walked closer and asked, "Ma'am, are you okay?" The woman looked down and quietly answered, "I'm fine." Daniel knew she wasn't. He asked, "Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" The woman shook her head. She said no. Daniel looked at the house behind him. Then he looked at the woman again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. There was only one $20 bill inside. He stared at it for several seconds. That $20 could buy the groceries his daughter needed. But the woman sitting in front of him might not survive the night without food. Daniel finally pulled the bill from his wallet. He handed it to her and said, "Please take this." The woman stared at the money in disbelief. She said, "I can't take this." Daniel smiled and answered, "Yes, you can." She asked, "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. He said, "My daughter and I will figure things out tomorrow." The woman began to cry. She held the $20 bill tightly in both hands. Then she looked at Daniel and said something that he would remember for the rest of his life. She whispered, "You have no idea what you just did for me." Victoria Harrington was the founder of Harrington Global, one of the largest private investment companies in the United States. She was worth billions of dollars. She owned hotels, apartment buildings, restaurants, technology companies, and real estate across several states. Daniel looked at the woman standing in front of him. He couldn't believe it. He asked, "Why were you sleeping on the sidewalk?" Victoria lowered her eyes. Then she answered, "Because I wanted to know if people would still treat me like a human being when they thought I had nothing." Daniel didn't know what to say. Victoria continued. She explained that a few weeks earlier, someone inside her company had been stealing millions of dollars. The betrayal had come from someone she trusted deeply. She had discovered that several people around her only cared about her money. So she decided to disappear. She left her expensive clothes, jewelry, phone, credit cards, and security team behind. For several days, she traveled around the city dressed as a homeless woman. She wanted to see how ordinary people treated someone they believed was worthless. And most people ignored her. Some people insulted her. Some people told her to leave. Others simply walked past without looking at her. But Daniel stopped. He gave her his last $20. Victoria looked directly into his eyes. She said, "You had almost nothing, Daniel, but you still gave me what you had." Daniel shook his head. He said, "I didn't do anything special." Victoria smiled. She answered, "That's exactly what makes it special." Then Victoria looked at Lily. She asked, "Is this your daughter?" Daniel nodded. Victoria smiled at Lily and said, "Your father is a very good man." Lily proudly answered, "I know." Victoria laughed for the first time. Then she handed Daniel a small envelope. Daniel refused to take it. He said, "I didn't help you because I wanted money." Victoria replied, "I know." She opened the envelope herself. Inside was a letter. She said, "This isn't payment for the $20. Daniel looked confused. Victoria continued, "This is an offer." She explained that Harrington Global was opening a new property management division. She had been searching for someone trustworthy to manage several residential properties. After investigating Daniel's background, she discovered that he had spent years working with heating, cooling, electrical systems, and property maintenance. She offered him a management position with a salary of $120,000 per year. Daniel couldn't believe it. He asked, "Why would you offer this to me?" Victoria smiled. "Because I can teach someone skills." She paused. "But I can't teach someone character." Daniel looked down. For the first time in years, he felt like someone had actually seen him. Not his old truck. Not his small house. Not his bank account. But him. The father who worked 2 jobs. The man who kept going after losing his wife. The person who gave away his last $20 even when he desperately needed it himself. Daniel accepted the job. But Victoria wasn't finished. She had one more surprise. She told Daniel that she had secretly paid off every medical bill that remained from his wife's illness. Daniel stood completely still. He couldn't breathe. He asked, "You did what?" Victoria said, "You spent years paying for a past you couldn't change." She handed him another document. It showed that every remaining medical debt had been paid. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Why?" Victoria answered, "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing." Daniel looked at her. Victoria explained that years earlier, before she became wealthy, she had been a struggling young woman. Her father had died, her family had lost their home, and she had almost given up. A stranger had once given her a meal and told her never to be ashamed of starting over. That stranger had changed her life, and now Victoria believed it was her turn to help someone else. Daniel looked at Lily. His daughter was smiling. She whispered, "Daddy, Mommy would be happy." Daniel finally broke down. He hugged Lily tightly. For years, he had believed that being strong meant never accepting help. But that morning, he finally understood something. Sometimes strength means having the courage to accept the kindness you once gave to someone else. Victoria turned toward her car. Before leaving, she stopped and looked back at Daniel. She said, "Daniel, that $20 didn't make you rich." Daniel smiled. Victoria continued, "But it proved that you were already wealthy in the one way that matters." Daniel asked, "What's that?" Victoria smiled. "Your heart." The luxury car slowly disappeared down the street. Daniel stood on the sidewalk with Lily beside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the next bill. He wasn't thinking about the next shift. He wasn't wondering whether there would be enough food for tomorrow. He simply stood there and watched the car disappear. And Lily held his hand. That night, Daniel took the same $20 bill from his memory and wrote its story in a notebook. He wrote one sentence at the bottom of the page. Never believe that a small act of kindness is worthless. Because sometimes, the smallest thing you do for someone can completely change their life. And sometimes, when you think you are saving someone else, you don't realize that they're about to save you too. If this story touched your heart, remember one thing. You don't have to be rich to make a difference. You don't need millions of dollars. You don't need a luxury car. Sometimes, all someone needs is a little kindness, a little compassion, and one person willing to stop when everyone else keeps walking. And if you believe kindness still matters in this world, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today.